It starts with recognizing that your practice revenue is really your own income, right? It's not separate. And the other piece of it is a mindset shift, right? To really start thinking about every dollar that's coming in and recognizing that this dollar should be working for you as well as for your practice.
Welcome to the Money Skills for Therapists podcast, where we answer this question: how can therapists and health practitioners go from money shame and confusion to feeling calm and confident about their finances and get money really working for them in both their private practice and their lives? I'm your host, Linzy Bonham, therapist turned money coach and creator of the course Money Skills for Therapists. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is Liane Wood. Liane is the owner and CEO of Build Your Private Practice, which is a Canadian practice building company. They've been helping health practitioners launch, grow, and scale private practices since 2016. And today, Liane and I get into the topic of magic money. It's the magical thinking that we can have about money as practitioners in private practice, that the money is not real, that it's easy to spend. And what this ends up looking like is, even though you're making good money in your practice, it seems to all disappear and there's not actually much left at the end of the day to go home to you. So today, Liane and I dig into what this looks like, some possible reasons for this, places that this comes from, and what to do if you find yourself overspending in your private practice, maybe experiencing some of this magical thinking, this magic money thinking. Here is my conversation with Liane Wood. So Liane, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. You are a fellow Canadian consultant, builder, supporter. Can you tell folks a little bit about the work that you do before we dig into all the stuff we want to talk about today?
For sure. Yeah. I'm a registered psychotherapist, and I also coach and mentor therapists and mental health practitioners to build thriving, successful private practices. And my company is called Build Your Private Practice. And we've got, courses and coaching and all that type of stuff to really help therapists focus on the business side of their practice and understand the business side of running a private practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And it's great that you are a Canadian doing this work, because I know there's some things about Canadian business that are different than American business. And we love our American friends, obviously. Mm-hmm. But also often I've had folks say to me that they're really glad that I'm Canadian, because there's cultural differences, there's tax differences, like there are specific things about being Canadian. So it's really neat that you're able to offer that very specifically Canadian context around practice building.
You.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really important for me as well, is to be able to provide that background and that context that, this is coming from a Canadian lens or perspective. Mm-hmm. And again, totally. I think there's a lot of crossover with our American neighbors, mm-hmm. and there are some differences.
Yeah, for sure. So what we're going to talk about today, though, Americans, don't turn off this podcast. We're going to talk about things that apply to everybody. So you talk about this concept of therapists treating money like magic money, the revenue coming into their practice. Can you tell me what more you mean about this magic money concept and why that can be so problematic for therapists?
For sure. Yeah, I really wasn't quite sure what else to call it besides magic money, or maybe monopoly money, but I like magic money better. And it's just like I've just, in working with therapists and talking with them about, the business side of their practice, and oftentimes, that spills over into the financial side. And there's this idea. It's not really a conscious idea. I think it's like kind of running under the surface of conscious, that the money coming into our practices isn't real money. So this money, we do client sessions, and then the money comes in for those sessions, and then therapists treat it like, oh, I can go and spend it on this, that, and the other thing for my practice. But then at the end of the day, when they need to take money out of their practice for their own personal income, mm-hmm. there isn't enough there to cover living expenses.
Yes.
Right. And so then there is this scarcity mentality, or this lack mentality that is coming in. Well, I can't afford, to get the good groceries, or I can't mm-hmm. afford the vacation, or these really, really important pieces. And so that's where I'm like, okay, but when I look at, their overall revenue and what is coming into their practice and what they're talking about, you actually got a really good practice.
Yes.
You've got good revenue coming
Totally.
in. And so
Yes.
we just need to, tweak a few things.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that come to mind for me around that because I'd like to dig into and theorize a little bit about what is this and why is it. One thing that comes to mind for me right away is that therapists are nerds. We love what we love, right? And so
Mhm,
that's part of
mhm,
how I think it says good things about us that we want to invest is like when the money comes in the door and you see money in your bank account and you're like, oh, but I also want to learn about, sensory motor psychotherapy, or, oh, now I can do that really cool conference in Minnesota.
mm.
The part of us that gets excited and just wants to know everything
Yeah.
and be the best possible therapist probably kind of gets its hands on the money before the other parts of us that are like, oh, right, I have a mortgage. My child needs to go to school, which can be less
Mhm.
fun stuff, right? Like it's harder to hold
Right.
excitement about everyday expenses and the good groceries, although the good groceries are good. That's one thing that I see is, and one theory that I would have is like, the parts of us that, get excited, but also don't feel good enough need that
Mhm.
constantly need to be learning to prove ourselves that we're good enough and constantly aware of our deficits. So there's a duality there. But that part that always wants to
Absolutely.
learn more and improve can be deceived or delusional that that's its money, that it's all about that, and forget about these
Mhm.
other responsibilities and obligations that belong to that money.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, you've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I think of. What are some other things that you've observed that you think lead to this magic money thinking?
I do think it is coming from that, like what you just hit on, that I need this for my practice. And then I think that, the other area that I will see therapists kind of spending a lot of money on, but not necessarily getting the return on is marketing.
Mm.
And a lot of therapists feel like they're uncomfortable with the idea of like selling themselves or marketing. And so it comes to marketing, like, I don't want to do marketing, but they recognize that they need marketing for their practice
Mhm.
to grow. And because they're uncomfortable with it,
Mm.
they'll just pay somebody else to do it
Mhm.
for them.
Mhm.
And they may not, because it's uncomfortable for them, they don't really like it. They don't take the time to really research, okay, well, what marketing is actually going to be effective? And they may or may not, they may miss that nobody knows your practice the way you do. Nobody knows your ideal client the way you do. And so just hiring someone to do marketing may not be effective because the person you've hired
Mm-mm.
doesn't
No.
know your ideal client. And it's not bad. They're probably doing their very best
Yes.
to market your practice for
Yes.
you, but they need a lot of input from you. And that's
Mm.
something that therapists, like the whole marketing piece, they kind of run away from. And so it's easier, air brackets, to throw money at somebody and say, you market my practice. But then what happens is because there isn't enough input from the therapist into the marketing, it's oftentimes not nearly as effective as it could be.
Yeah,
And that's money down the drain.
it is. Yeah. And I
Mhm.
have seen therapists pay $20,000 for a website and marketing package that when I
Mhm.
look at their website, it's not actually hitting on the things that their ideal client is going to be looking for.
Right.
Right. So, and that's
Right.
that's very much too,
Mhm.
as you say, folks who are outside of our space don't understand what mindset our potential clients are when they come, right? Like when your
Mhm.
potential client lands on your website, they don't want to hear about you and your credentials. They want to see their language reflected back at them. They want to know that you get them. Like all of these pieces that being in the field and being able to put ourselves in the perspective in the shoes of our clients, we could think through like, oh, of course, like I need to share these things. But somebody who's in marketing, they don't know your ideal client's motivation and where they're at emotionally when they're looking for you. And also I would say too, how perhaps little bandwidth they have to process whether or not you're the right person for them before they're like, no, I don't know. I'm just going to move on. Right. Because people,
Right.
if they're in
Mhm.
pain too, any kind of friction will get in the way. But folks in marketing might be used to selling to people who are interested and excited and want to buy something, not people who are
Mhm.
in distress, and like looking for
It's
somebody
very
who
yeah,
really
it's very
gets them.
different.
It's very different. It's
Exactly.
very different.
Yeah.
But, there's that thing of you don't know what you don't know. And so what I'm hearing
Mhm.
you say here is, the temptation to basically throw money at something without necessarily thinking through, is this the best use of my money? Right. So you're maybe putting a bunch of money into
Mhm.
marketing, but it's not necessarily going to be very effective if the person doesn't really get your clients and who you're trying to reach.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
You've got it.
another piece that I think about and that I talk about in my course, which I
Mhm.
think hits on this magic money thinking is in, I believe it's module 2 of my course. I'm not sure. I've got a lesson which is called Your Business Money is Not Your Money. It feels like a
Mhm.
really unfun conversation to have with people, but it's something that sticks out to people because people who have this kind of magical thinking are like, oh no, she's right. Right. But
Mhm.
I think too, when we start to earn, it can feel like, oh my gosh, I'm rich. Like,
Right.
in
Mhm.
your household, you've never had $10,000 showing up a month before or $8,000. And so
Mhm.
when you start to think about that as your money, we can very quickly get into like, I'm rich. I don't even need to think about if I can afford this. Of course I can afford this. Look at all this money. But we don't think
Right.
about the business expenses, like just the overhead. We don't think
Mhm.
about the tax obligations. We don't think about needing
Mhm.
to leave some money in the bank account in case next month is quieter. And then as you say,
Mhm.
then when it comes down to your paycheck, suddenly there isn't enough money for you to be okay at home
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
all of these other jobs have had to be done by the money first. And if you're paying yourself last, which can be the default, your
Mhm.
personal self and your household ends up taking the hit for this kind of lack of boundaries with your money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. What are some other traps that you see therapists fall into that lead them to overspending? Like we just talked here about kind of like throwing your money at a problem, trying to get somebody else to kind of do the work that you don't want to do. What other
Mhm.
traps do you see therapists falling into that lead to overspending?
Maybe like another trap would be subscribing to services or software that they think they should have, right? Those must have practice management tools when, something that's simpler or more cost effective would work just as well, right?
Mm.
So if you're online for any amount of time and sort of, searching for therapist tools, there is so many different subscriptions and tools that you can like with all the bells and whistles, and this is really fancy, and it's going to automatically send, I don't know, we'll pick on assessments. It's going to automatically send these assessments. It's going to, send them back to you. It's going to look really pretty. It's, all these things. And you think, oh, wow, that would, make my practice amazing. And so we sign up for it. And then do we actually use it? Right? And are we using it the way that we were imagining? And what I find often is that there is no check or balance, right? We'll sign up for a subscription or we'll buy a tool that's supposed to be really helpful for us in our practice. And then either we forget about it. It's kind of
Yes.
like a gym membership. You
Yeah.
know how people sign up for the gym membership and they go for like 3 weeks and
Yes.
then they're like, I don't want to work out.
Yes. Yeah.
And then 2 years later, they're still paying
They're
this
like,
monthly gym.
oh, I got
It's
to
the
go to the gym
same
and
type.
cancel that membership.
It's the same type
Yeah.
of idea, right?
Yes.
But we're doing it in our practices with different tools and different things that way. And so it's another trap that I
Mm.
think that we can fall into is just
Mhm.
thinking that, oh, this is going to help me, or this is going to be really good for my practice, and so we buy it and then we don't use it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm hearing, like, a couple like, almost 2 different pieces in that, right? It's like, the first is getting something that maybe you don't really need
Yep.
because it's shiny. It's shiny objects.
Mhm.
Again, this is kind of shiny
Mhm.
objects in a different zone, right? Rather than the
Yep.
the education shiny object that we were talking about. This tool is gonna make my life so much easier, so much better, which of course is
Mhm.
what good marketing promises us, right?
Mhm.
Your marriage will
Mhm.
improve because of this tool that you have in your business. Like, promise the
Yep.
moon and the stars. But the other thing that I'm hearing here is then not being in touch with the fact of like, oh, I'm actually still paying for this thing. Have I used this in the last 3 months? So losing track of what we're spending on and not really being
Right.
in touch with where the money is going every month. And I will say the subscription based model that is now the default for
Mhm.
software is
Mhm.
so good at playing on this weakness that we have as humans. So good at it.
Right.
And like all of
Mhm.
these things that you used to be able to just buy, you used to be able to just own software. Now you pay
Mhm.
for it every single month. And the
Mhm.
math on it is like, we pay so much more now for these softwares than we did, 5
Yeah.
years ago. But it
Yeah.
also really preys on this human, and prey is probably a harsh word, but it takes advantage of this vulnerability that we have of people of just doing something and then just kind of forgetting that we did it. Right. Or like not
Exactly.
stopping to reassess and think, do I need to make a change here? What is coming out of my credit
Exactly.
card? Wait a second, that $15 charge that doesn't seem like a lot. I haven't used that software in 8 months. And
Mhm.
I'm sure that a lot of software that is on subscription, like SaaS, I bet that half the money they make is on software that is not used, if not more. People just forgot that they have something.
I think that's highly possible.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
just really that like not going back and being with your numbers, seeing what's actually
Mhm.
happening. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, just thinking about, how useful is this? Like gym membership is not what a therapist would do, but like saying like, okay, like, am I in better shape now because I've been using this, right? Like, has this software or whatever in my practice, has it saved me time by making me more efficient like I thought it was going to? Am I actually using this to its fullest potential? Or did I get it and then go, oh, that looks like a lot of work to learn, and so we don't learn it? But we're paying for it.
Yes.
And I'm laughing about this,
Yes.
Linzy, because, like,
Oh, of
guilty,
course.
right? Like,
Of course.
I'm not saying this,
Yeah.
to I'm talking about myself here
Yes.
as much as I am about anyone else,
Yes.
right? I've done this.
Yeah.
I've done all of
And
this.
I will say, I was also laughing with familiarity. I was just muted. But yes, it's like, this is such a human thing, right? And I can think very clearly of examples of things that I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's going to change my business that I never used. Right. And
Right.
this is,
Mhm.
I think also the
Mhm.
peril of Instagram ads, Facebook ads, which I use in my own business. So like I'm not,
Mhm.
ethically
Mhm.
exempt from this, but certainly the kinds of things that seem like a really good idea at 9 p.m. at night when you're tired and you're scrolling on your phone are maybe
Mhm.
not always the best purchases for your business. Yeah. Like really stopping to
Mhm.
think, as you say, can I use this? Am I using this? Is this actually having the effect that it was supposed to have? And
Right.
reassessing,
Mhm.
if this is actually
Mhm.
something you want to keep paying for. Because the
Mhm.
default is it's going to keep paying that company literally forever until you cancel those subscriptions. You will pay for them until the day you die.
Mhm.
So we have to stop
Mhm.
and interrupt that. So,
Mhm.
how can therapists then shift their mindset around some of these pieces, move away from this like, magic money thinking into being more intentional about how they grow their practice and manage their money?
I think that it starts with recognizing that your practice revenue is really your own income, right? It's not separate. And the other piece of it is a mindset shift, right? To really start thinking about every dollar that's coming in and recognizing that this dollar should be working for you as well as for your practice. Your money should be working for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
and really getting that mindset there, right? And so I, you know, think about getting really clear about what you actually need
Mm.
versus what feels nice to have,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so, kind of going through your expenses and really evaluating your expenses. And we were just talking about subscriptions. So, really asking yourself, is this subscription really necessary? Right?
Yeah.
If you're talking about a certification or another modality, do I actually need this? Or do I already have a certification or modality? This different one than the one that I'm looking at taking this course on, but do I already have something in my practice that helps me when I'm working with people with XYZ? And so, if I have something already that works when I'm dealing with XYZ with clients, then do I actually need
Yeah.
that new modality or certification, or is it just
Mhm.
that I want it?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And so we need to be able to prioritize, what we're spending our money on, and looking at this as investment,
Yes.
right? And when we do an investment, you want a return on income.
Mhm. Yes. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And that return can be, if it's a subscription to a software that's going to save you time, is going to make you more efficient, then it should be doing that.
Yes. Yes.
Right? If it's marketing, it should be bringing you new clients. Like,
Mhm.
enough new clients that you're actually making money, right? If you're spending $5 on marketing, like, you should be making $15.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and that's
Right?
that return on investment equation, right? So stopping to
Yeah.
think about I'm hearing, first of all, like slowing down and asking yourself, do I really need things before you buy them? But if you are
Mhm.
investing in things, are they actually working? If you're paying for the software to get time back, are you getting time back and turning that into something else of value, whether it's money or whether it's just like this allows me to go home for dinner every night, which is invaluable, right? So it's
Right.
not always, I think the return on investment isn't always just financial. Sometimes it's energetic or
Mhm.
emotional. But yeah,
Mhm.
are you actually getting something back from this purchase? Is it delivering value to you? Is it investment or is this just an expense? Just money going
Mhm.
out the door. Yeah, that
Mhm.
like slowing down and being intentional and thinking too about the first piece that we were talking about, it, you were just referencing of, do I need this training? Like, or do I just want it? Something else that comes to mind for me is like, where's that coming from? Right? Like, is it
Mhm.
excitement,
Mhm.
but are you maybe prone to kind of like a manic excitement that runs out, the gas runs out of the tank before you actually get the benefit of the thing? Noticing if that's a pattern. Is this that you don't feel good enough as a person in general and you're constantly trying to do things to bolster it? Is it that you have one client that you feel like you need this training for, but maybe they're not actually a good fit for you? And like, you should be referring
And
out
you
like
maybe don't even wanna work with them.
100%, right? So like slowing down to ask yourself, what is this? Because I think too, when we have money, it's so tempting to throw money at pain and just be like, oh, well, this will make me feel better. Like, I'll feel good enough if I do this other 4,000 certification, or if I could just figure out how to work with this person, then everything would be better. And when you have money, it's easy to just throw money at those things, but you might not actually be getting to the root of the issue. So
Exactly.
slowing down that intention piece. Any
Mhm.
final thoughts on these pieces about magic money, spending, intentionality?
I think it's, we're talking a lot on the practice side of things, which I think is important, but
Mm,
I also think it's equally
yeah.
important for us to be setting aside money for ourselves, right? Whether it's self-care, life enhancements, whether it's taking a much needed vacation
Yeah.
or just giving yourself the financial flexibility to work fewer hours, right? When we're intentional with our revenue, it should be positively impacting both our practice as well as our personal lives,
Mhm.
right? We want to be able to support a lifestyle that keeps us energized and balanced so that we're not burning out as therapists.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is ultimately what our businesses should be doing for us, is giving us a
Hmm.
life that we enjoy.
Hmm.
For our
Yeah.
clients' benefit so we can keep doing the work, but for us because this is your life, right? So making sure that the money's
Exactly.
actually taking care of you. Thank you
Hmm.
so much, Liane, for coming on the
Hmm.
podcast today. If folks want to hear more about you, want to find you, follow you, learn from you, where can they find you?
For sure. Our website is buildyourprivatepractice.ca. And we've also got a very thriving, energetic Facebook group on Facebook. And so if you search groups and search for Build Your Private Practice, you'll find us that way as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much
Mhm.
for coming on the podcast today, Liane.
Thank you for having me.
If you find yourself experiencing this magic money thinking in your own business, I hope there's ideas in this podcast that you can use to stop and investigate and be with your relationship to money. Start to be curious about where some of this magic money thinking is coming up. And as Liane said, ultimately think about, where can this money actually serve you better? Does this money need to be serving you in your business? If so, what are the things that you can invest in your business that will actually get you return? Or should this money be coming home to you and your family? So often our businesses and our therapist selves get so many more resources than we give ourselves at home. And that is not fair to our personal selves. That's not fair to our families. And ultimately, that's not sustainable. So lots of ideas here on where you can get started if you find yourself overspending, if you have this magic money thinking in your practice. Thanks so much to Liane for bringing these ideas to us today. If you're enjoying the podcast, it's so helpful if you leave me a review. You can leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. You can share what you enjoy about the podcast or a favorite episode, and also tell a friend while you're at it. Why not both? Why not leave a review and tell a friend? Those are really helpful ways for other therapists and health practitioners to find us and be part of these conversations. Thanks for joining me today.